Hello, everyone. I am Leonna Abraham Brandao, Blog Talk Radio here. I'm going to be talking today about the raising the age of criminal responsibility to 25 years and under. Right now, we've been hearing about the bills that have been written and passed, or in the process of being passed, raising the age of criminal responsibility to 18 to 20 from 18. Psychologists and neuroscience scientists increasingly support raising the age of criminal responsibility up to 25, arguing that the human brain is not fully mature until the mid-20s. Sometimes they talk about even higher than that. Traditional legal systems establish an arbitrary boundary of adulthood at age 18, but developmental psychology indicates that individuals ages 18 to 25, often termed emerging adults as they call it, are different from older adults in cognitive control and emotional processing. Neurodevelopmental theories, psychologists lean heavily on the dual systems model to explain youth behavior, which is the Lawrence Steinberg's dual system model. Social, emotional system, brain regions processing towards and emotions mature early, peaking in adolescence and early adulthood. Cognitive control system, the prefrontal cortex, which governs planning, impulse control, and long-term consequence reasoning, does not fully develop until roughly age 25. Psychosocial factors and culpability. It goes on and on and on. Speaking of these young people, now many are adults and many are much older, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. But many went in when they were young, when they were very young. Many went in when they were under the age of 25 or 26. Now we're hearing so much about all of these different reasons behind the consideration of raising the age of criminal responsibility to 25 and under. Psychiatrists and psychologists all are in agreement when it comes to something like this. So we need to really look at some of these issues of mental illnesses in the United States of America. We need to look at some of these issues about these people being given life and life without parole sentencing, and even in some states, given the death penalty for crimes they committed while under the age of 25. I'm one that doesn't believe in life and life without parole or death for anyone, any crime, because people are known to change. And we have people in the communities today, people in politics, in other high positions, who are still committing crimes, and they're well beyond the age of 25 or 26, but they're getting away with it. So my theory is that we need to look at these changes that are being made, these bills that are being written, to increase the ages of criminal responsibility from 18 and 20 to 25. It's clear that these psychiatrists and psychologists have documented all of their information. It's clear that they are in full agreement that the age of criminal responsibility should be raised. Now, if we have kids after high school that go on to college, they're still in school. They have not crossed that age. Many kids in high school are so nervous when they're getting ready to graduate because they don't know what their future is going to bring them. They don't know what to do. They're going to be now teenagers, adolescents, graduating from high school and going into the adult world. And many of them who are going on to college are still considered students. We need to look at all of these kids that are graduating from high school, that are going out to the communities, those that are going on to college. And we need to see where they are at those ages. They are in doubts of what their future is going to bring them. Many of them are vulnerable. Many of them do not know what's to come of what's going on before them. And then they have the peer influence. Young adults are highly vulnerable to social compliance and group thinking. And then you have the transitory identity, character, morality, and personality traits are still forming, meaning criminal acts at this stage rarely predict permanent antisocial patterns. There's so much going on with these kids, and there's so much going on with these adults who made their mistakes when they were kids, when they were adolescents, when they were young. It should not be, when making a mistake, it should not be that their life is thrown away by giving them life sentences, by giving them life without parole, by giving them death sentences. They've made a mistake. I could see if they were habitual mistakes, but they're not. Criminal behavior naturally peaks in the late teens and early 20s, then sharply drops as the brain matures by 25. Placing an under 25 individual in adult prisons halts identity development, exposes them to trauma, and spikes recidivism. And when you think about it, many of these people incarcerated were traumatized as children, as adolescents, long before going to prison, but they didn't get the help they needed. Neuroplasticity remains high until the age of 25, making this demographic high receptive to vocational education or behavioral therapy. We have these so-called professional psychiatrists, psychologists out there that are doing all this research, but yet they're not coming forth with their findings. They're not coming forth to defend these people that are incarcerated. And so we have to look at not only a lot of these prisoners, not only are a lot of them in prison as a result of being traumatized as young adolescents or even children, not considering the fact that they were under a lot of pressure, because once you leave high school, now you're going to college, they have to consider how they're going to pay for their college. Many have gotten scholarships or grants, and many haven't. And many have to work on repaying any loans that they take out. And you see there's many of them out there working while they're going to college, working on weekends, working on holidays, working on school vacations. There's so much going on. And then when they get into relationships and they're working and they're going to college, they're doing it. There's so much going on, so many dynamics going on at the same time. Many of them can't take it. And a lot of times when they get in relationships with people that are not in college, that are not students, but they're out there enjoying themselves, they like to party, they like to go to bars, they like to do all these things that a lot of college students cannot do not want to do, because they have so many other things that they're trying to put together, because they're trying to make a future for themselves. Many of them are trying to make a future for themselves. So then it involves not only peer conflict, but it involves relationships that are soon to fall apart because there's two different people. There's too many things going on both sides. One is trying to better themselves, another's trying to be out there having a good time. Many find a college person boring because they don't like to party, but yet that person is trying to build a future so that someday when he or she does get married, or that does get seriously involved, they're going to have something to fall back on. So there's so many things that are going through the minds of people that are 25 and under. And as an adult, as many of us as adults, we can almost understand it, because even at our age, things can still be complicated. And then we're living in a society today where the entire nation is upside down. I have, in the advocacy work that I've done, advocating for the incarcerated men, women, and youth throughout the years, I've come across so many situations of unfortunate people who made one mistake and have been in prison all their lives. Some of them in their 80s now, some of them in wheelchairs, some of them terminally ill, some of them no longer able to even defend themselves. And yet we have a government, a society that just wants so much anger and revenge, just wants the worst for these individuals. If psychiatrists and psychologists can say that they believe the age should be raised, of criminal responsibility should be raised to 25, I believe that we should all listen to them. We should all consider the situations in which these people are incarcerated and how long they've been in. Repeat offenders is one thing. Terrorists is another thing. Some of these things are so tremendous. There are so many reasons why people are incarcerated. One fatal shot to send someone to prison for life without parole or to the death sentences, or one fatal shot fired years and years and years ago when they were still under the age, when they were still going through all these youth dynamics. Young people from high school to college, or from high school to the streets, find jobs, to be on their own after being in school for so long and knowing they were safe because they had their professors or their teachers and they were at home with their parents or their family, however the family was constructed. But to finally be out there on your own after graduating from high school, not knowing what your future's going to bring, and struggling to be the best you can, but yet not having the financial means, so you're seriously trying with all your might to do your schooling, your education, to pay for your loans, your grants. It's a struggle. And many people, they don't get into relationships until they're almost out of college. And some get into relationships while they're still in college, which is really sad because this is where things can fall apart in many cases. But I wanted to talk about the ages, raising the age of criminal responsibilities to 25. Although psychiatrists and psychologists say sometimes it can go all the way up to 30. But 25 and under is very detrimental. And then adding that to the already psychological, dysfunctional cases that we have throughout the country, it makes it even worse. Because we also have that epidemic of mental illnesses in the United States of America. So we're dealing with the mental illnesses throughout the country. We're dealing with the ages of criminal responsibility with these young people. And many of them, when you think about it, many of them came from dysfunctional homes, or came from single parent homes, or came from homes where there was abuses going on, and they're still trying to fight that, trying to go to college, trying to gain a good reputation, trying to gain some knowledge so that they can be the best they can be in spite or despite all that's going on in their lives. I belong to a lot of groups, as I said before, on social media. And I've heard a lot of parents talk about how painful it is for them because they have a loved one behind those prison walls who are ready to give up. And many of them cannot understand why they're going through more abuse, more punishment beyond those prison walls. There's many people in this society today who have loved ones incarcerated who are feeling the guilt because they were not there for their loved ones. many feeling that they were part of their loved one's problems to begin with, which is probably true. But we shouldn't have to be looking at all of these things right now, because the whole purpose of incarceration is to rehabilitate, to reform, to release. But what's happening now in our penal system throughout the country is that once a person is sent to prison, our government only knows one way to solve all these problems. It's not so much about rehabilitation in their eyes. It's about more punishment. It's about more money. Because many of these people in prisons are bringing in excess money to the government. These large corporations that we know of even now that are making millions and millions and billions of dollars off the taxpayers with the new leadership. We have these corporations that are making so much money, these vendors that are making so much money, the DOC that's making so much money. And these contracted prison providers, these medical providers, psychological providers that are being hired by the Department of Corrections, only being hired because they're the cheapest contracted provider. The department doesn't hire the most appropriate and more expensive providers. They hire the cheapest, which is a failure, a total failure in the rehabilitation of prisoners. Because these contracted providers, because they are so cheap, they're also very inexperienced, or they're very, I hate to say it, but they're not appropriate providers. Many prisoners have died at the hands of these contracted providers. Many of these prisoners have been permanently damaged at the hands of these contracted providers. I want everyone to just think for a minute. For you that have loved ones already incarcerated, I know that you're probably thinking about a lot of these things. But I have advice for you as well. I believe that you, of all people, having a loved one that's incarcerated, you of all people should be trying to help your loved one. By sitting down and doing some research, go on the internet and look for senators and state reps in your state advocating for prison reform, advocating for raising the age of criminal responsibility to 25, advocating to stop all the abuses beyond those prison walls. It doesn't take anyone, especially a family member, it doesn't take anyone a lot of work to advocate for their loved ones. If you can be on social media for hours at a time complaining about how you feel with your loved one incarcerated, think about how your loved one's feeling when they know that others are out there advocating for them, when their own loved one can't even pick up a phone or write a letter. Like I always say, if we're not going to be part of the solution to these problems, then we are part of the problem itself. And many prisoners may not say it to their mothers or their fathers or their siblings or their friends or anyone. They may not say it, but it hurts them, I'm sure, to know that they are so much in need of help. And their family member or their friend or friends have forgotten, have given up on them, to not even want to help. There's a lot of people in politics who have had friends, who have gone to school with friends, who are now incarcerated, who got life sentences for a first offense, and many even wrongfully convicted. But where do these people go? Where do these so-called friends, after they became influential, where did they go? They turn their back on somebody that they grew up with, someone they knew to be really good, and all of a sudden committed an offense with no reasoning or no understanding. I know of a politician that grew up with someone. They were good friends, very good friends. They grew up right around the corner from one another. And that politician one time said, why didn't he come to me? Why didn't he come to me to talk to me? But yet, But yet that incarcerated individual has been in prison for 30 years. Do you think that that friend of his who became a politician made one effort to ever go and visit him to find out why he never went to him? And that's what we have in this society today. We have people that have no support whatsoever when they need it. And when they commit an offense and end up in prison, a first offense and only offense, everyone's quick to judge, but no one is willing to go in and ask that individual, why? What happened? Especially when that individual had no criminal history, had been in no trouble prior to that, had been doing all the right things, had been working, had never been involved with substances. I I know if I had a friend like that, I would definitely want to talk to that friend. I would definitely want to ask what happened. I would definitely say to her or him, tell me what happened. That was not like you to do something like that. But no, if somebody that's supposed to be such a good friend and now is in an influential position and completely ignores it, then that was not a true friend in the beginning, which only means that that person incarcerated didn't have the support that could have kept him from or her from doing what they did. There's a lot of support out there, but whether that support is given or whether that support is denied or ignored, that's where the problems come in. Not with the individual seeking the help or needing the help, because sometimes when people are so dysfunctional, when they have so much confusion going on in their lives, when they're so psychologically depressed or psychologically dysfunctional at the time, they're not going to know that they're serious enough, that they're that bad off to go for help. People have to see it. And usually if you're very close to someone, you can see when things change. You can see when they start acting differently. And then you can try to provide the support if you're a true friend or a relative. But if you just don't do anything, if you completely ignore it, and that person does something wrong, and then years later you're going to say, why didn't you come to me? Or why didn't she come to me? Who's at fault in this case? And teachers, they can see. A lot of times if teachers are really focused on their clients or their students, they're going to notice when that student's depressed or notice when that student's acting irrational or different. There have been teachers that have contacted the parents at home to let them know that their young child, their teenage child, is acting strange. And we see that so many times. Look at the father that just ended up going to prison for 15 years because he bought his son a gift for Christmas, a weapon, a gun. And the teachers contacting the family to let them know that the student's acting strange. And the father or mother, they didn't approach the student. They didn't hide the gun. They didn't lock the gun up. So now that student, that young student, I believe he was 15 years old, went to prison for life, and the father got sentenced to 15 years because he let the son have the weapon, knowing that the school was concerned. These are things that we have to look at. It's not always the individual who commits the offense. It's not always the individual alone. It's the people that were warned in some way or another that something was not right, that the student in school was making threats, or the student was talking about it, or the student had weapons that were taken from them, knives or whatever that may have been taken from them, or the student's been acting seriously depressed, or not himself or herself. So when we think about all these people in prison, we have to look at everything. We have to look at everyone that's involved. Even though they don't want to admit it now, they want to separate themselves from the prisoner. They have to think about the roles they could have played in at least providing some support. The family member, the parent, the teacher, The friends, so-called goody two-shoe friends that no longer want to have anything to do with these people once they go to prison. But they could have helped prevent it in the first place if they were there to support that person. Then you have, unfortunately, you have these lawyers, many of them not really wanting to advocate for anybody, they just want the money. So you also have a lot of these corrupt lawyers who will take a bribe. You have these prosecutors that just want to win. They don't care how they do it. They don't care if they think the person has been wrongfully judged, if the person does not deserve to be treated or be sentenced to life. But these prosecutors, they want to win their case. So they will bring in false witnesses. They will make up lies themselves. Then you have these corrupt judges that they will work something out. The prosecutors will work something out with the judges. And if the judges are corrupt, then the defendant has no chance. It's happened in cases, and I can confirm that. I can confirm that. So there are corrupt judges. There are corrupt prosecutors. There are corrupt lawyers. And then, unfortunately, when these people go to prison, they have to deal with the corruption behind the prison walls, the corruption in the Department of Corrections, the lies, deception of prison officials and staff. There's so much injustices going on. So much injustice is going on in this country, in these prisons, with these lawyers, with these prosecutors, with these judges, even with the governors. There's so much corruption. And yet the ones that are suffering the most are the ones that are in for life, serving life and life without parole sentences, that went in when they were 20, 18, 20, 25, that have been in prison for years and years and years with no hope in sight, and having to deal with the lies and deception of these prison officials and correctional officers, the fake, made-up disciplinary reports accusing them of all kinds of crimes that they could not have committed, many of them who have been in solitary at the time. But yet, once those things are put on their record, on their paper, no one's there to take it off. No one's there to clear the record. So you have people in prison who are in prison, went to prison on a first offense, never been in prison, never been in trouble, nothing, to a prisoner who now, with all the bogus reports, with now all the lies and deceptions of those overseeing them, that a prisoner is going to have a record that was worse than the Charles Manson case, simply because no influential person or people want to help these prisoners. And when these legislative members, these senators, when they go into the prisons to visit, they don't go to the source. They don't go to the places where these prisoners are hidden away. So I'm going off track now, and I don't want to do that. I'm going back to raising the age of criminal responsibility to the age of 25 and under. So for those of you who are motivated enough and really want to make a difference, send your state reps and senators, lawmakers, send them emails. That's all you have to do is get their email addresses and send them emails, or you can send them a letter or give a call and just say you're in support of raising the ages of criminal responsibility to 25 years. That you're also calling to advocate for independent oversight in the prisons around the country, in the prisons in your state. That you're calling to ask them to please vote or write up a bill that demands independent oversight in the prisons in your state. Because right now there's no oversight of these prisons. And all of these prisoners that are dying unexpectedly, suspiciously, and we do have a high rate of suicides in the country. Send them a letter or an email asking them to please write a bill Write a bill that states mandatory, independent oversight in the prisons in your state, consisting of lawyers, of a social worker, of a substance abuse counselor, of a psychiatrist, and of a psychologist. Because that's what needs to be on these parole boards. It doesn't need to be more government officials. It needs to be people who actually work with the mentally ill on a regular basis. People that do work with families and children on a regular basis. And those lawyers who are not corrupt, who do advocate for prisoners who have had their rights violated, those who have been first-time offenders, those who are in for wrongful convictions. These are people that should be on the parole board. And you as a family member, or you as a friend, or you as an advocate of the incarcerated population, it only takes a few minutes to sit down, to look up your state reps, your senators, your lawmakers, and send them an email, make a phone call, or send a letter, just asking them to please write a bill to raise the criminal age of responsibility to 25 and under, and to also write a bill that the Department of Corrections should have independent oversight, not their own internal, but independent oversight on their parole board of a lawyer, of a psychiatrist, of a psychologist, of a substance abuse counselor, of a social worker. These are things that you want to do, and it only takes about 10 minutes at the most. So I encourage all of you who are motivated, and those of you who have a loved one inside, those of you who are crying out all the time how you feel because it hurts you to hear from your son or your daughter that are talking about these issues. If you love them that much and you really want to help them, pick up that phone, go on the computer, look up all these things. Whatever comes to your mind, ask your loved one that's incarcerated what they would like you to work on. And then go on the internet and type it in the browser like you're writing it on a piece of paper. Even if it's free books for prisoners, free educational books for prisoners. Go on their internet browser and type in free educational books for prisoners. Free Bibles for prisoners. Pro bono lawyers for prisoners. For those of you who do not know what pro bono means, it means lawyers that will not charge, especially if the person is unable to afford to hire an attorney. For those of you who have loved ones in your state that are suffering from some abuses or violations or whatever the case may be, and you're crying out because you don't know how to help, go on the internet browser and type in prisoner advocates or prisoner activists, state prisoner activists, state prisoner advocates in your state, and you'd be surprised to see how many are out there advocating for your loved one as well as others. When they talk about drugs in the prisons being brought in by family members or friends, go on the internet and type in drugs being brought in by prison staff, guards caught smuggling drugs in the prisons. Anything you want to know, go on the internet and type it in like you're writing it on a piece of paper. You don't have to do the HTTP. You don't have to do the www. You just need to write it like you're writing it on a piece of paper. And your answers will be there. And with that said, I'm going to thank all of you for listening in, and we are now going to end this episode.